Here's my script. Could you read it?
Okay, yeah, and move that
Let's
script over
edit
here.
this part
Yeah.
out, okay? Going 10-1.
Rain dance, sun dance, con.
Let's do this.
You guys ready?
Quiet
Thank you
on
so
set.
much for this award. Ready and action.
Welcome back to Mel Moment Mondays. I'm your host, Mel, and today I'm joined by a very talented sports photographer here in New York City. He has photographed various sports, most recently as an in-house photographer for New York's professional women's hockey team, the Sirens. Alex Wohl, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Thank you, Mel. It's good to see you again, and happy to be here.
Yeah, I feel like we always kind of like cross paths like every now and then doing photography stuff or just in general.
Yeah, I know it's nice. As you know, working as a sports photographer can be very isolating, and you kind of do your own thing. But every once in a while, you'll like meet good people on shoots, even though you're not really working together. You can strike up friendships, find things you have in common, and kind of lean on each other after the shoot, which is nice.
Yeah, exactly. So like what got you into sports photography in the first place or photography? I feel like there's sometimes like a progression from, doing something else and then honing in on the craft.
I started out as a phone photographer, as in, I just had my iPhone and I loved taking photos of my now wife. I just would like take pictures of her all the time. And this is about 7 years ago, and she thought it'd be a good idea for me to have a hobby. So she bought me a camera for my birthday, like a small mirrorless camera. It was a Sony A6000, and I just took it everywhere. I had a bunch of little vintage lenses that were all manual focus, and was obsessed with it. So I took it everywhere. I took it to family events. I took it to parties. I took it to work. I took it to um, sporting events that I was playing in. Like, I play hockey, so I would take it to my games and just take photos of my friends. And then if there was a game before or after, I would take photos of that too. And just having grown up around sports and been a lifelong athlete, and also just growing up with a lot of sports pictures on my walls or on my phone or on my computer desktop or whatever, I've always loved like the capturing of the moment and um, just the game itself. So that's kind of where I got the idea to start getting into sports photography. Um, just, by having my camera at the rink, it kind of helped get me started.
That's so cool. Yeah, I feel like a lot of times, specifically sports, I feel like a lot of sports photographers do come from like sporty backgrounds themselves, which like then directly correlates to, like knowing kind of like how to get the shots or like how the game works. I feel like a lot of, specifically it's easier to take pictures of sports that you are familiar with. So that
Right.
kind of leads me into the second question that I have for you, which is like what kind of sports do you photograph? Besides, you already mentioned hockey, but I know you do a bunch of other sports as well.
My main two are definitely ice hockey, working with the Sirens, and then I also work for the women's elite rugby team called the New York Exiles. It's in its inaugural season, this league. But I've shot rugby for a long time now too. I mean, a long time, it's all relative. I've been doing it for like 5 years. But it's probably my favorite sport to shoot is rugby because it's so, and maybe we can get into this later, but it's just so beautiful and barbaric at the same time. But beyond hockey and rugby, I will shoot anything. I shoot soccer, I shoot basketball. I've never shot American football, um, or baseball, but I would absolutely be interested in shooting those. But ultimately, I just kind of go where the clients are.
Yeah, yeah. And I feel like there's like easier and harder sports to capture. I feel like hockey and rugby are really fast-paced sports. Like what can you kind of say about that? And like are there any like settings that you know going into, either a hockey game or a rugby match that you're like, okay, the camera should be set here or, anything that's kind of like um yeah, just like settings or like just kind of defaults.
It's tough because I mean, if I'm shooting pro hockey and I'm shooting the Sirens at Prudential Center in Newark, the light doesn't really change. So I keep pretty much the same settings every game. I think I have it at 2.8, um, 1/1600th of a second shutter speed to really like capture, like freeze the action. And then I think my ISO is usually at about 2500. I could probably stop it down a little bit, like 3.5 or 3.2 of the aperture. Um, and the reason being, like, especially with the women's hockey players, they wear cages. So there are a lot of times where I'm trying to take a portrait or something, and the focuses on the cage in front of them and not their actual eyes. But if I stop it down 3.2 or 3.5, um, it allows me to get a lot more in focus. But I really do like the 2.8 look. So I don't know, I mess with that a little bit. Every once in a while I'll do some, like panning shots, so I'll really slow down the shutter speed and close the aperture a bit, but for the most part I stick to those settings I just said. With rugby though, the light changes all the time, whether there are clouds or rain or it's evening or whatever. So, I mean, I really just try to keep a shutter speed of at least like 1250, like 1/1250th of a second. Um, and I try to shoot wide open, but sometimes I'll stop it down a little bit too, depending on the light.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's very interesting. I feel like for me at least, I do a lot more like amateur like club. Oh my gosh, my cat. Hold on. He's playing with he's like running this across the floor. Um but I do a lot
Bring
of
him
like
in here.
out he's hi. But yeah, I feel like I do a lot of like more amateur or like outdoor sports. Which yeah, the settings would have to kind of change with daylight as well, as you said. And um it's really interesting too. How would you like create the athlete photographer relationship, and what's the difference between, working, freelance, kind of like what just like picking a team or creating that relationship with a team versus, getting hired in house? Are there any differences? And how has that been for you?
Good question. Well, I think in terms of like having a relationship with the athletes, I kind of leave them alone, especially now that I am working. Well, it actually, so with the Sirens, with the PWHL, it's a lot more established, I think, than the rugby league at this point, even though it's only in its second season. There are a lot of people involved that really know what they're doing who come from a really established sports background, running the league. So these players, they're the best of the best. They are all at the peak of their game, the best in the world. They're there to do their job and get out, and I am there to capture it, but I'm not there to be friends with any of them. If any of them talk to me or we have a moment where we have a joke or a laugh or whatever, that's great, but I'm there to just like capture the moment, take a nice photo of them that maybe they will like and want to post on their Instagram, but ultimately like I stay out of their way. I don't go out of my way to talk to them. Um, which is tough because you're around all these athletes. I would love to be buds with all of them because I think they're all so cool. But I have a job to do, they have a job to do, and I don't want to get in the way of that. And I would hate to also be have any sort of impact on their performance in a negative way. So yeah, I stay out of the way. But with the rugby team, it's a lot more. I have a lot more, I think, flexibility with the players. I go in the locker room with them, even though like I'm not in there when they're changing, but I'm in there for pregame and postgame speeches, and we're having fun with portraits and things like that. I did their media day, so these players really know me. Whereas with the Sirens, I'm a little more hands off. Um, but yeah, I don't know. Have you much experience with like getting to know players or athletes? And what's that like for you?
Yeah, I feel like I mean I haven't like worked in house anywhere for sports or anything, mostly like smaller teams. But yeah, I mean there's a lot of it where it is, you don't know them, you don't talk to them, you don't want to like interfere, you're just there to capture the moment. But other times, it's like the head of the like a club team of a sport here, asked me to come in to take a specific, maybe it's a championship thing or whatever. And they like ask you like, okay, get to know like the captain or whatever, and they'll kind of show you whatever. And it really depends. Again, I think it depends on, as you said, kind of like the caliber of the sports team or the league or whatever, and whether or not, the people themselves want that relationship with the photographer or not. Like if you're doing like sports day or, their team pictures or whatever, that's a little bit different, than coming in just every game and just taking media pictures. There's a little bit more of a relationship there. But yeah, I find it interesting. I mean, sports is not my number one thing that I do for photography, but it's something that I like doing. So I guess for me, it's more of a hobbyist kind of thing where, I try and pick teams that are a little bit more like, oh, like get to know the people.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. What kind of like helps you create your own look? Because I feel like sports is one of those things where, you look at, basketball pictures of the Knicks or, the hockey teams here or baseball, whatever, and they all kind of like have the same look in a way, but at the same time, there you can tell like what photographer is what photographer, and then obviously there's ones that are like highly stylized for a specific thing. How do you personally balance, taking something for, we just need this in the newspaper versus, like I see your work, there's like some more stylized and more, I can tell when you're having a little bit more fun versus when it's more like, okay, I'm there for the job.
Um, I think I think you can do both. But it's taken me a little while to get more comfortable doing both at any given game. So like for the Sirens, they have presets that um I have to apply to every photo so that they kind of match the look of the New York Sirens Instagram page. Um, and it's not to my preference, but that's the job is like I have to make it look like the way the team wants it to look. So I think my style is kind of it has evolved over time. I used to really want to like make my colors very distinct, very Alex Wohl, whatever. And I would really just use one of like Lightroom's basic presets, but I used it all the time, and that's just like what made all my photos look the way they did. But over time, I'm trying to get more into editing as a photojournalist would, which is just very minimal edits. Like get the exposure right when you take the shot. And then if you need to tweak the exposure a little bit or the white balance a little bit, that's fine. But really not, I'm not like adding presets or any sort of crazy post-production on the photos. I'm trying to keep it like true to life. So the stuff that I'm most excited about now that I do for myself looks like that. And then stuff, when I'm working for a client or a team, maybe I will make it look the way they want it to look, but I'll also maybe later on edit the photos for myself for my own Instagram or my website or whatever. And then just in terms of like overall look, in terms, like composition or things like that, I think when you get hired to do a job, they're hiring you because they like your style. So I lean into that. I just shoot how I want it, like how I want the pictures to look. And I trust that I'm going to make something that my client's going to like and not worry too much about trying to match what their Instagram page looks like or their website or their publication or whatever, and just kind of give them the shots that I want to give them, if that makes any sense.
Right, right. No, that totally does. Like yeah, I feel like there's definitely, as you said, there can be a balance even within, the presets or whatever. How what kind of going off of, the presets and stuff, what is the turnaround like for sports, your freelance versus in-house, and then also what kind of is the I guess the editing process for that as well?
Well, when I'm working a Sirens game or an Exiles rugby game, um, that it's very crucial for the social media manager to be able to put out updates at regular intervals. So like after there's a goal or after each period or after each half, they're going to want to post a graphic that says, here's the score of the game at this interval, and they want a picture that has been taken to reflect that moment. So as I'm shooting, I am also I use Sony. I've never actually used Canon or Nikon or any other brand really, so I don't know what the process is with other companies, but on my Sony camera, I hit the C3 button when I'm viewing a photo and it locks an image so that um, when I upload my photos to Photo Mechanic, I set it to only upload the locked photos. So if I set a lock on 5 or 10 pictures, it'll only ingest those 5 or 10 instead of whatever 1,000 pictures I've already taken. So it's very quick. I edit those very quick. Basically, I just straighten them. And if there's a preset that needs to be added, I'll add that. And then I upload it to the internet. And within about 5 minutes or less, my client has access to all those pictures. And then they can post it online. They've probably got a template ready for them to just put the image in. And then it has the score and everything on it already. So it's very quick, very minimal editing and it's a process, but it's something that I think it was tough for me to learn how to do, like the live edits and the live uploading during a game. Um, so yeah, that's was that the question? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah. No, you totally answered it. How I feel like that part of like concert photography, sports photography, anything where you need it immediately, there's like that level of like urgency that really like, can get you kind of stressed. Like, has there been any times where you've been like, oh, like I'm not getting any good pictures or I can't edit this fast enough or there's like just like stuff going down. How do you kind of like resolve that or like how do you um you know go about that for yourself?
I mean, it stinks sometimes you're not having a good game for whatever reason. Like you're just a little slow on the shutter button, or maybe the action's just at the complete other end of the field or a rink from you, and like you can't really do anything about that. So I think you just have to be a little more creative. If the action's not really happening on your end, find something else that you can shoot. And there are definitely games where I'm texting my other photographers who are there, or I'm just in my head like, oh my God, these pictures are terrible. I'm not having a good game, and that is so frustrating. But yeah, like you can only do so much. So I try to take detail shots or portraits of things around me, and that way I can make sure I have something to deliver. I mean, there are tons of times where I am not getting a lot of action, but I'll get like a good portrait or two, and the clients are almost always happy with that.
Yeah. How do you feel? I feel like sports photography is also very competitive. In a sense of like, oh, I want my picture in the news. I want my picture to be chosen. Should people really like go with that? Is that something that is kind of toxic, or is it something that it's like just part of the job, Because also like kind of goes with how much do you like work with the other photographers? Are you friends with them, or is it more of a who can get the best shot?
I mean, it's a great question. With the Sirens, there are two photographers. So it's Nala Burton. She's the main team photographer, and then there's me. And we both shoot. She'll shoot the Sirens during warm-ups and during their walk-ins, and I'll always shoot the away team warm-ups and walk-ins. And then we both shoot the game and just we capture what's in front of us. Um, there are times where she'll upload an image and the Sirens will use hers over mine. And like at the first game or two, my ego was like, dang, this stinks. I want them to use my pictures. But overall, like she and I are there to do a job, and that is to make these athletes look good, to document what's happening in front of us and put our ego aside. And she's super talented, and I I'm just happy I'm working in pro sports. That's so cool. So there are moments where I get frustrated when I think I've got a really good picture and it doesn't get used, but ultimately, like, I'm not running that social media account or I'm not the photo editor at that newspaper or whatever. It's up to them to decide what's best for their product, what picture is going to make their product like make the most sense for them. And so, yeah, I just try to keep that mindset when someone passes over my pictures. It's not personal, at least I don't think it is. And also, I really do think as competitive as it is, we all want to like be the best and we all want to get our photos seen by millions of people. I think it really matters to be a good person in this industry because I think if two people are like fairly even in talent, but one of them's just really nice and the other one is like has a super ego issue or something, they're gonna always choose the nice person. So like I try to be supportive and um, make sure that uh, my fellow photographers know that I appreciate what they're doing in their work and that I'm here for them if they need anything.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's completely true. I feel like a lot of times in specifically photography too, when there's so many of us, doing whatever it is, sports, events, whatever. It can kind of become a competitive thing when you should remember, it's like a lot of the times you have no control over who picks what for the pictures,
Right.
and like you're there to capture an event, as you said, and to just kind of enjoy it too. I feel like sometimes people get really wrapped up in like as the ego of it, the I want to be the best, which is great, that drives you, but at the same time, it's like, oh, you got to remember, I'm working pro sports, I'm at this arena with these cool people doing like something that 5 years ago I would have never imagined. It's like one of those situations.
I have that thought all the time. Like, it's not as glamorous as I thought it would be, working in pro sports, and yet it is still like so fun and it's exhausting, but I love it. I really love it. My wife doesn't love it because it requires me to be gone a lot and we have a baby, but I love it. I really do. And so I just try to show gratitude anytime I get a chance to like take photos of people who are also doing what they love. It's really special.
Yeah, yeah. It's yeah, it's a cool thing. It's a cool thing. How do you think camera gear matters? Just kind of, this is completely a jump from the conversation we just had, but I was just thinking, it's like you said you only work with Sony. Um, One, why is that? Two, if there's someone starting out and they're like, you at football games or any game, you see those guys with massive lenses, like probably like 50 pounds and stuff, or people with like really high end gear, and you're like,
Mhm.
damn, I could never be something like that. I don't have the money, but I want to work in sports or start getting into it. What's your advice for that, and kind of just what's your process as well?
You know, I really don't think I think gear hmm, I think it's sold to us as like gear is the most important thing. At least when you first start out. I personally I think they call it gas gear acquisition syndrome, where all I did was like buy stuff and it doesn't make you a better photographer. Like having a 70 to 200 2.8 is great. And having a 400 2.8 for field sports, oh my God. Yeah, amazing. Everyone should have one. But no, I mean, they're like $12,000 to $14,000. I can't afford that. Um, so gear is important to some people. Like I think the pros to get the shots that are needed for like Getty images and for all these different wire services and publications, it is crucial to have like really high-end gear because these are people whose whole like career rests on the images they're making. But if you're just starting out, you really don't need the best stuff. Um, I thought that might help me, but ultimately, like, if you can take a good picture, you like it doesn't matter what you're using. I think not having the 70 to 200 2.8 and like the big prime lens and all this stuff just forces you to be more creative. You got to move around the field, move around the rink, look for things that other people aren't noticing at the field or at the game, and capture that. Like, I think my first 3 or 4 years, all I was really doing was taking portraits, and I have this good friend who's a photographer for Getty. Her name's Sarah Steer, and she, always has a lot of feedback for me. Like the portraits look great. Really need to work on your action. But my formative photography years. It's just the portraits. It's all I was doing because that's all I really had the gear for. Um, and just practice, use what you have, and I don't know. I feel like I'm dancing around the question, but as far as like why I only use Sony, it's just what I had when my wife bought me my first camera. I bought like a bunch of Sony compatible lenses and then upgraded from the A6000 to a Sony A7 III, which I still have as my backup camera. And then my main camera is a Sony A9. And both of these cameras are like 6, 7 years old in terms of when they came out on the market. So I'm also not using like top of the line camera bodies. Uh, I wish that I were, but I have great lenses. Like I said, it's not about the equipment, but I have very good equipment. Um, but it's taken me a long time and a lot of saving and a lot of sacrificing other expenses to buy these things, and I'm still paying for it.
No, exactly. I feel like also, um, as you get more advanced, upgrading the gear does make sense because you know how to use the gear. If you have a beginner starting out with, a pro sports camera, they're not going to know how to use half of the settings and half of the stuff. And, you're giving them a huge lens. They probably can't even hold it. It's like stuff like that, which, starting out, as you said, being more creative. When you're limited, you find ways to work around it, which in turn, makes you a better photographer for when you do get the stuff you want. You kind of have already learned to troubleshoot.
Yeah.
Um, if you were hiring, someone to be a sports photographer to follow you around or to capture, extra footage at a game, what advice would you give them and what type of person are you looking for?
Um, I would want somebody who isn't um opposed to getting feedback. Like like we were talking about ego and wanting to get our pictures seen by everybody. I think there's also a tendency for a lot of photographers to put a huge amount of pride in their work without any sort like without being humble. People can be like averse to getting feedback or don't think that they really need to get better because they're so good. And then they're like, why am I not getting jobs? Why am I not getting hired? I think I want someone who's hungry, wants to learn, is curious about how other people see things, how other people like to shoot things, um, curious about different perspectives and trying new things and just being experimental. Yeah, all of those things I think make a more interesting and good photographer than somebody who's like, this is how I shoot, take it or leave it. I think I'm a pro already. You should hire me. I don't know if that makes a lot of sense, but yeah, I think being humble and curious and hungry goes a long way. And that's what I would want if I were to hire somebody.
Yeah, those are really good. I feel like especially in sports, learning to adapt and being adaptable yourself, to feedback to anything is very important. What to you is your favorite process about this, or your favorite part of the process, I should say?
Oh man, I think I really love shooting action, but I've really enjoyed doing like portraits lately with studio lighting and seamless paper. I know I have my background blurred out, but I have a basement in my apartment and um, I have a lot of seamless paper and light stands and things like that. So it's been really fun for me to practice studio work, but kind of incorporate sports into it. So it's not just like just corporate headshots and stuff, which I also do, but trying to do like athlete portraits, people, holding a ball or, just wearing their jersey or whatever. It's crazy though. Like the only thing, like you could add a sports jersey or a ball to a photo and then automatically it's a sports picture. Whereas if I'm just wearing this t-shirt without a ball or whatever, it's not. It's completely different. I don't know how to explain it, but it's just a simple thing. But yeah, I've really enjoyed like adding that into my repertoire. But um, other favorite parts of the process, I love going to the arena. I love going to the stadium, the field, whatever, and just kind of feeling the energy in the stands with the fans at field or ice level. Like it's just such a rush to be out there. There was a couple months ago, the Sirens were playing the Ottawa Charge. And I think it was the Pride game. And Abby Rock did a what they call the Michigan, where she did the lacrosse move, scooped the puck into the net, and it was something I've seen online plenty, but seeing it in person, I didn't take photos of it. It was at the complete other end of the ice. But like being able to see that through the little photo hole with my own eyes, my jaw was on the floor, and it was the coolest thing I've ever seen. Nala got some incredible pictures of it that were all over the internet, and I was like so happy for her and also so annoyed that it wasn't at my end of the ice because it was insane. It was totally insane. And also, if it were at my end of the ice, I don't know if I would have gotten it because I miss moments all the time. I'm just like watching the game because I'm a fan. And stuff happens, and I'm like, oh my God, whoa, that was a crazy play. I should have been shooting. So yeah, I don't know. Just keep your finger on the trigger at all times.
So kind of to switch it up, um, I'm gonna play the like the film Would You Rather, which is just one question pertaining to what we've talked about. So today would be sports photography. But would you rather photograph the Olympics, be one of the photographers for the Olympics, or be a photographer at the championship, tournament of a sport of your choice?
Uh, the latter. I think it would be, and I think the answer would be to photograph the Rugby World Cup. Um, I would love to photograph the Stanley Cup Finals someday as like a massive hockey fan and just like I mean to see the cup awarded and see the players hoist the cup would be a dream come true. Just as a fan in the stands, but to be down there to photograph it would be I feel like that would be so special to me, but I think what appeals to me more about the Rugby World Cup is it's a global game, um, and it's so brutal. These people, like men and women, these players are just so fierce and also so kind. Like rugby players are really kind and welcoming. So I just would want to be a part of that. And then also all these different countries bring their own flavor. Like a lot of the Pacific Island countries have some sort of dance before a game, like the haka from New Zealand. Being able to capture that would be so cool. I don't know how would you answer that question? Because that is the Olympic. Also, the Olympics are incredible. Like I would love to be at the Olympics, but yeah, what would you do?
Oh, for me, I feel like most of the sports that I've either played or am most interested in are more of the individual sports that would be at the Olympics. So for me, I would probably have to choose the Olympics. But yeah, but I mean, again, if it's like the Stanley, the Stanley Cup or, World Series or the Super Bowl, I don't know. That's also a very hard choice because those are like really, they're huge and seeing the winner is just it's cool.
I mean, either way, like if you're at one of those events, you can kind of pat yourself on the back and say, "Hey, I made it. This is really cool." So I don't know. We'll see. Maybe that's in store for both of us down the line.
And then kind of to just wrap it up, we have like 4 minutes, I think, left on the thing. But if it cuts off, we'll pick it up. Is a question that I ask everyone. It's if you could tell your younger self, what advice would you give them?
Um, I think it would be a lot more about my career outside of photography. I think well, first of all, with regards to photography, I'd say be patient. Um, don't get upset if things don't work out for you the first time or the second time or the third time. And I would just say like I got into photography at around 29 or 30 and I'm 35 now and I feel like all of my peers are 10 years younger than me and way farther along than I am. And it can be frustrating, but also you have to keep perspective and recognize that everyone's journey is different. A lot of these people went to school for this or had different resources than maybe I had. So yeah, just like be patient, be persistent, um, stay the course, and also um, have like a second source of income so that you can really live the life you want to live. Because I've been freelancing exclusively for about a year and a half now, and it's really hard to like make a living as a freelance photographer without like whatever jobs I was doing before. So yeah, I think make sure you're making money outside of photography until it's like enough to live. Um, I think I need to workshop that answer, but ultimately be persistent, stay the course. Yeah, I don't know. All these things I'm trying to tell myself now, like every day, I tell these things to myself.
Yeah, I love that. I love that advice. It's so different for everyone, and you just got to be, persistent and open-minded. Yeah.
Yeah. But I love what I do. And, I think that's what brought us together is like having a love for sport and for having a camera in our hands and storytelling. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I definitely, it's a way to connect with people. It's a way to bring, something that people love to, their phones, to their TVs, to wherever they're looking at. It's a cool section of photography and of capturing. It's like photojournalism, but at the same time, it's also not. There's art behind it,
Yeah,
which is cool. Yeah, it's very
totally.
unique.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. It's been so fun. How can people follow you, see your work, all of that?
I can be found at Alex Wohl Photography at Instagram, and my website is www.alexwohlphotography.com. I really need to redo my website, but my Instagram's pretty up to date.
Alrighty. Well, thank you so much again.
Thank you so much, Mel. Good to see you.
If you enjoyed this podcast and want to learn more about my experience as an up and coming filmmaker or catch up on more episodes, follow me on Instagram at MELYDE12. This podcast is also available on Spotify, SoundCloud, and YouTube. Please like, subscribe, and spread the word. Thank you guys again, and that's a wrap.